Okay guys, for today's compression test, we're obviously going to need a compression tester. And since we're doing it on a Isuzu Trooper, we are going to need this one right here that is I believe an M14 thread. I forget the pitch. But you'll need that to thread into your spark plug hole. And you'll also need an extension with a wobble and another extension to get into that rear driver's side spark plug tube, ratchet, and a 5/8 socket for a spark plug. Now, every one of these I've had, the rubber rips out, so don't feel bad about that. That's why I have this grabbing tool right here, and this one has a magnet on the end, which is really nice because I can just take a regular 5/8 socket or that one, undo it, use this to grab it out, and it's perfect. Also, when you need to reinstall your spark plugs after the test, always recommend anti-seize. That way, next time you have to do your spark plugs, whether it's the regular maintenance interval or next time you have to do something else, it'll be really simple to get it out and won't damage the threads. So, we'll pick you back up when we're by the Trooper, ready to do the test.
Hey everyone, so we're here now, ready to perform the compression test now that you know what tools you need. So before we do that, we have to take a couple of steps in the engine. So one of the first things you're going to want to do is locate, in this case, your spark plug wires in your ignition coil. And you're going to want to label which one goes where. So in this case, 1, 3, 5, and 2, 4, 6. I know that the spark plug wires also do have certain lengths, but sometimes it's just easier to label things and not question it. So these have already been labeled. The ignition coil has labels, and then you can remove the spark plug wires from the spark plugs. So before that as well, we're going to locate the fuse box, which is located here. Now, when you can perform a compression test, you don't want the engine to fire. So you're going to locate your fuel pump fuse, which is right there. So we're going to take the cover off, thank you, and we will be removing that fuse. I guess we'll do it right now, or attempt to. Okay, so now that that fuse is removed, you can go ahead and remove your spark plugs with the tools that were said previously, and we can hook up the compression tester and begin testing.
Alright, so we've disconnected all the spark plugs now. We put them out the way. As another precaution, I'm going to unplug these plugs on the ignition coils. That way it will not arc while it's sitting in the engine bay. And more important, if you don't unplug them all at once, they won't try to start the fire if there's any remaining fuel. So I'm going to go ahead and unplug these, and then we'll get ready to start doing the engine compression after we remove all the spark plugs.
So I just want to take a moment to discuss these spark plugs, because when you take your spark plugs out, this is an excellent time to actually look at them and see the health of your engine through the spark plug. So in this case, these are soaked in oil, which would end up causing some misfiring. Very common on the Troopers is, and any of the Isuzu engines actually, even on my Rodeo, the spark plug tube seals that go under the valve cover tend to leak. So that's why you're seeing so much oil in the cylinders. This is something that we just discovered, so we'll have to fix that, which we will do in another video. But other than that, the spark plugs don't look like they have any pre-detonation, any bad damage to them. They look pretty clean. They're older for sure, so I'll probably just go ahead and replace them because the gap could be out, which we could also go over in another video, how to check it. But for now, we're just going to get back to the compression test. So here I have a notebook, and I have dry written because we're going to start with a dry compression test. A dry compression test is exactly what it sounds like. It doesn't have any oil in the cylinder, and that's a wet compression test. So what you would do is you'd start with a dry compression test for all of your cylinders, And if any of them are within about 10% difference between each other, well, next to each other, any of them look low to you. It depends on your motor what your compression would actually be. Then you would try putting oil in the cylinder and see if it increases the compression. If it does increase, that is sealing your piston rings when the oil goes in. So that is indicating that your rings around your piston are worn. So we're going to start with this and we're going to see what numbers it gives. So onto that note, here's the compression tester, which you saw earlier. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pick this one as the adapter, because that is the size spark plug that is for this engine. And I will be putting that in the engine now. So the best way to do this is you will be finding your spark plug hole, basically, and twist it and make sure you don't cross thread your adapter into where the spark plug would go.
Yeah, it's taking like no effort to twist this in, and now it's tightened up, so you know it's good. If it's hard when you first put it in, then you know it's not threading right.
Right. So once that is in, you will take your gauge.
And over here, you can release the air. Make sure it's on 0 when you start. That's your air your coupler.
And you'll attach it just like that. And it's easier to have two people for this, so I will be out here showing you guys exactly how the compression tester will work, how much you should turn an engine over, and Alex will be turning the key inside.
And we also had to put
yes,
a jump box on here because it does take quite a bit of power to keep turning over the starter without actually running. It wouldn't hurt to do on any compression test, but you don't have to. Our battery is a little weak, so we need the jump box to do the test.
Okay, so with that, he will jump in the car and we will start running our first test. So I'm outside holding the gauge, Alex is inside, he will be turning the key. For the troopers, I usually turn the engine over about 4 times. It depends on your car, but you'll notice how it jumps up and holds compression, at least, well, hopefully. We haven't actually done this engine yet. If it does not, I'll explain that part, so go ahead. Okay, so that actually ended up being about 6-7 times, but you saw how it jumped from about 0 to 75, I think it was, and it jumped up and it's currently holding. So we are holding at about 175. You'll want to have it turn where you end up, have the person keep turning the engine where you basically see it stop, where it wasn't going much past 175. That's kind of the end game number there. There are times where I've seen an engine where it basically didn't jump beyond 25 and we kept turning and turning and it just wouldn't go. So we knew something was wrong with that cylinder. So you'll have to make your own judgment on how many times you should turn it. I've had with my Escort go about 3-4 times, but for this case we had about 6 or 7. So we'll do one more and we'll go over the results at the end. So we just did the compression test on cylinder 2. We're gonna do one more on cylinder 4. So go ahead. Okay. So this one jumped up much higher. It was much stronger, about 100. And we are holding at about 185, 190, 190. So once again, it's holding, so that means it's not losing compression right now. That thing is continuing to beep at me. And then when you're done, you just, if it wants to do it, just press the button, release the air, and you're good. We're back with our results, and hooray! We don't have a head gasket problem. As I was thinking, we did not, but we do have something weird going on with cylinder 2 up in there. I'm not going to do a wet test on this. I just feel like the rings are probably worn at this time with 141,000 miles starting to wear, or it could just have some carbon buildup or some buildup on them. I think with the next oil change, we're going to run some Marvel Mystery Oil through it to see if that loosens up, and we'll come back and revisit this later after driving it a little bit. But yeah, that saves us a ton of work on that front. We do still have a bunch of maintenance that we have found that we need to do. That's on my other page here. We're going to do some spark plugs. We're going to do the valve covers because obviously, as you guys saw with the spark plugs earlier, these spark plug tube covers have been leaking oil into the cylinder, so that's going to cause plenty of issues. We're going to do an intake gasket. We know that that leak is coming from inside here.
It's under the intake. There are two hard coolant passages that go from behind the thermostat to your heater core on the firewall, and they have rubber O-rings on them. And with age, they will just give out. And this one totally gave out to the point where we filled it up with coolant, and in a matter of 30 seconds, the valley under the intake was full of
Right in
coolant.
here. Yep, this filled up, and then it just, when we moved the car, it just dumped out the back. So that's basically, definitely needs to get done. We're going to look at the timing belt and water pump kit for it when we have a bunch of hoses to replace, because a bunch of these just look old and cracked, and I don't want to deal with that. And we'll do the AC belt, which is down there, kind of. You can kind of see it in the shadows there. And then we also have the alternator belt on that side. So we will go over all of that specifically to the Isuzu Trooper in other videos, but for now, this saves us a bunch of time by not having to do a head gasket. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Oh yeah, and pulling the motor. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. As always, subscribe, like, share with your friends. Hopefully this helps somebody, and if there's something that you guys want to see more or more detail of, please put it in the comments. Until next time.